On this edition of Crime Chronicles, we come to you from Aurora, Colorado, where on July 20th, 2012, a man opened fire inside this theater, resulting in 12 deaths. On this segment, we'll also take a look at the general phenomenon as mass shootings and talk about some of the challenges and some of the facts and some of the myths about mass shootings. We'll take a look at what has become known as the Batman killings on this edition of Crime Chronicles. On July 20th, 2012, the theater behind me hosted a midnight debut of the film Batman: The Dark Knight Rises. At about 12:30, one of the patrons, a man named James Holmes, who was seated on the front row and who was dressed in costume, but that didn't attract much attention because quite a few theater goers, devoted Batman fans, were dressed in costume as well. But James Holmes exited the rarely used emergency exit within the theater from the front row, went to the back of the parking lot here and retrieved a number of weapons, and that's when the mayhem and the bloodshed ensued.
There were about 400 people inside Theater 9. The adjoining theater, which was also premiering the Batman movie, was full as well. Holmes was dressed in black and wore a gas mask, a load-bearing vest, a ballistic helmet, bullet-resistant leggings, a bullet-resistant throat protector, a groin protector, and tactical gloves. Initially, few of the audience considered Holmes to be a threat. Some witnesses thought he was wearing a costume, like other audience members who had dressed up for the screening. Holmes threw one canister toward the left side of the theater, emitting a gas or smoke that partially obscured the audience members' vision, made their throats and skin itch, and caused eye irritation. He fired a 12-gauge Remington 870 Express tactical shotgun, first at the ceiling and then at the audience. He also fired a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 semi-automatic rifle with a 100-round drum magazine, which eventually malfunctioned. Finally, he fired a .40 caliber Glock 22 Gen 4 handgun. He shot first to the back of the room and then toward people in the aisles. A bullet passed through the wall and hit 3 people in the adjacent theater. The fire alarm sounded. Holmes fired 76 shots in the theater, 6 from the shotgun, 65 from a semi-automatic rifle, and 5 from the .40 caliber handgun.
By the time first responders and police arrived, 12 people were either dead or mortally wounded, and many more seriously injured. James Holmes left the theater, went to his car in the back of the parking lot again, but before he could get away, he was apprehended by a local police officer.
Police arrived within 90 seconds. For some reason, some people reported the shooting via Twitter or text messaging rather than calling the police. Officers were already at the theater by the time that the tweets were sent. Ambulances were hindered by chaos and congestion in the parking lot, and they were unable to reach the back of the complex where police had pulled the injured out through the emergency exit doors. Because of his tactical clothing, Holmes was at first thought to be another police officer. He was described as calm and disconnected during his arrest. Holmes was in possession of a first aid kit and spike strips, which he later admitted in an interview he had planned to use if police either shot at or chased him. Following his arrest, Holmes was jailed at the Arapahoe County Detention Center under suicide watch. He appeared in court wearing a specially designed suicide smock.
It soon became readily apparent that James Holmes was mentally ill. Police officers searched his apartment and found a Batman mask, but nothing terribly unusual. This probably was the case with most of the people who would take the trouble to attend a midnight screening of a Batman movie. Since his hair was a strange color of orange, one federal official immediately labeled him the Joker and claimed that the Joker, the Batman villain, was the inspiration for these killings. That turned out not to be the case. Aurora police officials quickly dismissed this guy as being inspired by the Batman movie per se.
The Colorado district attorney who prosecuted Holmes blamed federal officials for the rumor and said Holmes never called himself the Joker.
James Holmes was arrested without incident. In fact, he was cooperative. He told police officers that he had booby-trapped his apartment with explosives. He even left his music on very loud in the hopes that someone would come to complain, open the door, and the explosions would go off. But that did not happen. A neighbor of Holmes recalls hearing the loud music, going to his apartment, but noticing the door was not locked, did not go in, which was fortunate for her. Had she done so, she most likely would have been killed by the booby-trapped devices Holmes put in his apartment.
Police evacuated 5 buildings surrounding Holmes' apartment, which was about 5 miles from the cinema. Holmes' apartment complex is limited to University of Colorado Medical Center students, patients, and employees. One day after the shooting, officials disarmed an explosive device that was wired to the apartment's front door, allowing a remote-controlled robot to enter and disable other explosives. The apartment held more than 30 homemade grenades, wired to a control box in the kitchen, and filled with at least 30 U.S. gallons of gasoline. A Batman mask was also found in the apartment.
A lot happened in the aftermath of this shooting, including yet another re-examination of gun control laws in the United States. The makers of the Batman film expressed deep regret over their association with this event, although it is unlikely that this alone was a trigger for James Holmes.
The film's director, Christopher Nolan, issued a statement. "The movie theater is my home, and the idea that someone would violate that innocent and hopeful place in such an unbearably savage way is devastating to me. Nothing any of us can say could ever adequately express our feelings for the innocent victims of this appalling crime, but our thoughts are with them and their families." Warner Brothers canceled the film's gala premieres in France, Mexico, and Japan, and scaled down its marketing campaign in Finland. Some television advertisements for the film were canceled as well.
The makers of the Batman films scaled back on their massive publicity campaign to promote this film in homage to the Aurora victims. Plus, there was concern that this event might spawn copycats. That also prompted theater owners nationwide to take extra security precautions, to ban the wearing of masks inside a theater, to ban the carrying of even toy weapons inside a theater.
The National Association of Theater Owners distributed checklists from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to its members and said that members were working closely with law enforcement agencies and reviewing security procedures. The theater agreed to pay any funeral expenses incurred by the deceased victims' families, not covered by the Crime Victims Compensation Fund. Cinemark closed the entire Century Aurora 16 multiplex in the wake of the shooting, but reopened January 17, 2013.
The victims of the mass shooting here, at least the ones that survived, were visited by a number of luminaries and received condolences from around the world. President Barack Obama visited the victims in a hospital, as did Christian Bale, the English actor who portrayed Batman in this film.
Members of the Colorado Rockies baseball team also visited victims, as did members of the Denver Broncos. Well, who was the shooter? James Holmes grew up in Southern California, the son of an affluent Stanford-educated mathematician and a registered nurse. Even though he experienced mental health and socialization problems and entertained thoughts of killing people throughout his childhood, he was an outstanding student, participated in school sports, attended Lutheran church services, had a social life, and earned grades well enough to gain admission to the University of California, Riverside, where he earned a bachelor's degree. He decided to attend graduate school at the University of Colorado Medical School.
Prior to the shooting, James Holmes had been a student at the University of Colorado. He attended school for 1 year. He was also seen by mental health professionals on campus while a student there. In fact, the university was sued for not disclosing information pertaining to James Holmes' illness, but this lawsuit was unsuccessful.
On July 30th, Colorado prosecutors filed 4 more charges against Holmes, including 24 counts of first-degree murder, 116 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and 1 count of illegal possession of explosives. 2 charges were filed for each victim to expand the opportunities for prosecutors to obtain convictions. Prosecutors alleged on August 24, 2012, that Holmes told a classmate he wanted to kill people 4 months before the shooting. On March 27, 2013, Holmes' lawyers offered a guilty plea in exchange for prosecutors not seeking the death penalty. Prosecution declined the offer. The trial started on April 27, 2015. Holmes was represented by the Colorado State Public Defender's Office. On May 27th, Dr. William Reed, a court-appointed psychiatrist, testified that Holmes was mentally ill but also legally sane. On June 8th, a second psychiatrist, Jeffrey Metzner, testified that Holmes was mentally ill but legally sane during the shooting. and that he suffered from schizoaffective disorder. On July 16th, after jury deliberations, Holmes was found guilty of 24 counts of first-degree murder, 140 counts of attempted first-degree murder, 1 count of possessing illegal explosives, and a sentence enhancement of a crime of violence. The sentencing phase began on July 22nd. Holmes was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole on August 7th, after jurors failed to reach a unanimous decision over sentencing him to death. Holmes was sentenced to 12 life imprisonment sentences without parole and a maximum of 3,318 additional years on attempted murder and explosives charges. As is too often the case in mass shootings, the victims are forgotten while the shooter becomes a celebrity. In 2015, a campaign titled No Notoriety was started by the parents of one of the victims who died in the shooting. The idea was to encourage media outlets to limit the usage of the suspect's name when reporting about mass shootings. The people murdered were Jonathan Blunk, age 26, Alexander Boyk, age 18, Jesse Childress, age 29, Gordon Cowden, age 51, Jessica Gowie, age 24, John Larimer, age 27, Matt McQuinn, age 27, Michaela Medic, age 23, and Veronica Mosier Sullivan, age 6. Likewise, survivors of mass shootings are probably forgotten to an even greater degree. Ashley Moser, Veronica Mosier Sullivan's mother, suffered critical injuries after being shot in the chest. She was rendered a paraplegic, and she miscarried a week after the attack. Caleb Medley had serious brain damage and an injury to his right eye from a shotgun blast to the head, and underwent 3 brain surgeries. He required a feeding tube, had severely impaired movement, and could no longer speak.
The case of what has become known as the Batman shootings invites a larger discussion, and that is the subject of mass shootings in general in the United States. Actually, mass shootings and mass killings are nothing new. There have been recorded incidents of mass shootings involving multiple victims as far back as the 1920s. What has changed is the lethality of the weapons involved. It's much easier to kill a lot more people now than was the case in decades past.
On May 18, 1927, Andrew Kehoe, a 55-year-old Bath, Michigan farmer who was angry at having lost a local election several months earlier, dynamited the local school, killing 44 people, including 38 schoolchildren. Since there is no consensus of what constitutes a mass shooting, there is no definitive answer as to how many mass shootings have occurred in the United States or the number of people killed or wounded in mass shootings. Some of the worst mass shootings in the United States from 1966 to 1922 include August 1966. After killing his wife and mother, Charles Whitman, age 25, stood atop the clock tower at the University of Texas in Austin and killed 16 people. Open spaces, strip malls, and outdoor gatherings are among the most common settings for mass shootings. In August 1986, Patrick Sherrill, 44 years old, killed 14 people at the Edmond, Oklahoma post office where he was employed. Although going postal is used as a euphemism for a mass shooting, post offices are not a common site for mass shootings. But mass shootings are at a workplace, often involving a disgruntled former or current employee, are common. The Rockefeller Institute claims that the workplace is the most common site for mass shootings. In October 1991, George Hernard, age 35, killed 23 people at a Luby's cafeteria in Killeen, Texas. April 1999, Eric Harris, age 18, and Dylan Klebold, age 17, killed 13 people at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, where they were students. Some databases record schools as the most common site for mass shootings. In April 2007, Sung-Hyu Cho, 23 years old, a Virginia Tech student, killed 32 people on the Virginia Tech campus in Blacksburg, Virginia, the worst campus mass shooting in history. December 2012, Adam Lanza, age 20, killed his mother and then killed 26 people at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newton, Connecticut, including 20 children aged 6 and 7. In June 2016, Omar Mateen, 29 years old, killed 49 people at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. Based on Mateen's ties to Islamist terrorism, some databases classify this as a terrorist act rather than a mass shooting. The victims were targeted based on sexual orientation. In October 2017, Stephen Paddock, 64 years old, killed 60 people at the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival in Las Vegas, Nevada. The motive was never ascertained. In May 2022, Salvador Ramos, 18 years old, killed 21 people at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas.
Are mass shootings on the rise in the United States? Although it may seem obvious that the answer is yes, the truth is a little bit more murky. One challenge is, it is very difficult to define what is meant by a mass shooting. There are several databases in the United States that keep track of mass shootings, but each database has a different definition of what constitutes a mass shooting.
The causes, possible prevention measures, and remedies for mass shootings have been debated. Three things seem certain. Mass shootings have increased in numbers since the late 1990s. The publicity generated by mass shootings has inspired copycat shooters, with many mass shooters trying to make a name for themselves by killing the most people. The lethality of weapons has grown in recent decades, with mass shooters more able to inflict massive damage than was the case before.
As sort of a classroom assignment, if I were to ask every viewer watching this podcast to define what they meant by a mass shooting, we get many definitions. How many people have to have been shot? Were there any fatalities or were there mere injuries? Some databases exclude what are classified as terrorist attacks from mass shootings. Some databases exclude mass shootings in which there was no fatality, but there may have been victims. Some mass shooting databases exclude gang-related shootings. So you see, the challenge with studying mass shootings, or one challenge, is defining what a mass shooting means. Unfortunately, like most crimes, mass shootings are not going to go away, and neither will the debate over gun control or how to keep weapons out of the hands of dangerously mentally ill people like James Holmes. Well, I hope you enjoyed this edition of Crime Chronicles. As we delve into the darker side of human nature, we invite you to join us on our journey by liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. Your support helps make possible our inquiry into the sometimes unsettling but always fascinating phenomenon known as crime and justice. So hit that like and subscribe button right now and don't miss future episodes. Till then, Mark Jones, hoping you will join our Crime Chronicles community. And thanks for tuning in.